So there's a lot happening in the Middle East right now, and most of it is either confusing, incomplete, or just straight up noise. So let's clear that up. Today's April the 20th, and I'm gonna walk you through some of the key numbers, what they actually mean, and why you should care. This is the roll up. Let's get started. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is the economic impact of this conflict. I think it's important to start here because it really helps set the stage and us understanding the scale of the war that's going on. So right now, the United States has spent about $81 billion with an average daily burn of about $1 billion a day. If we look a little bit deeper, it looks like half of that, just about half of that, is through economic disruption. So indirect economic costs, including supply chain disruption, oil price impact, and domestic inflation. And then the rest of that is direct military action, right? Munitions, naval operations, air operations, etc. So with about $1 billion a day, that's pretty significant. Moving on to Israel and Iran, they're both burning about $500 million a day, with Iran's combined total at roughly $55 billion. Again, the interesting part about Iran is that a lot of their indirect costs is through economic disruption, not necessarily direct military action. So they're checking out about $4.1 billion in direct military action. The rest of that is just economic disruption. So oil price impacts, trade disruption, humanitarian issues. So it's really interesting to see that, although they are fighting a war, they're not burning a lot of money in war costs, right? It's mainly just sanctions and, the strait being closed and all that stuff. So for Israel, they're sitting at about 38 billion. And as we can tell, they're pretty evenly matched, kind of like the US, right? Direct military action, 17 billion, about 20 billion in indirect costs, right? Buildings being blown up, oil impact, trade disruption, what have you. The interesting thing to pay attention to, though, is the global economic impact, which is just under $1 trillion. We're sitting at about 900 billion. So that's significant when you think about it's not just the United States, it's not just Israel and Iran and the Gulf states. This is a global situation where every country in the world is being impacted because of the Strait of Hormuz and what it entails, right? All that trade coming through the strait is currently closed. And so everybody is suffering, right? It's not like Russia, Ukraine, where not a lot of people are feeling the economic impact. Africa and South America and North America, we're not really feeling the impact of that war. But in the Middle East, it's the exact opposite. Everybody globally feels the impact of that. Moving on, I think it's important to talk about some other aspects to the cost of this conflict. And this is where things get a little bit interesting, right? Because if you pay attention to the war like I do, you have a lot of questions. And for me, one of the questions was, what about the aid we're sending to Israel, right? And I think that's important because as Marco Rubio already confirmed, right, Secretary of State, we waged war against Iran because of Israel's preemptive actions that they were going to carry out. And because of that, I think it's safe to say that we started this war because of Israel. And because we're starting wars on behalf of our allies, I think it's important to look at how much money we are sending to our allies. That's a fair argument. We sent Israel about $26 billion. Again, we can always look deeper into this. You can pause and read this if you'd like as to what that funding was for. Followed up with that, we have $3.8 billion in 2025. Again, you can pause and read if you choose to do so. Following on, we have $1 billion that we sent in 2025 as well. And then lastly, we're looking at about $12 to $18 billion, which is currently pending, that we plan on sending to Israel this year in 2026. So a lot of money that we're shelling out to Israel, and it's interesting, right? I don't want to say anything too bad because people are watching. You guys know how it is, right? YouTube, Mossad, whoever's watching, they see this and they're like, "Oh, this guy hates." I just think it's important to look at the numbers that matter to us, right? Because this is money that's not going into our economy. Okay, this $43 billion that didn't go to us, that went to an ally, but we paid for that. So if they're going to be dragging us into war, I want to know what's going on with this. Okay. All right. The next thing I want to talk about is the aid that we're sending to Israel. So Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, already confirmed that we started this war in Iran and we waged war against Iran because of Israel and the actions they were going to carry out. Because of that, I think it's important to look at the aid that we're sending to our allies who are dragging us into conflicts. So to start out in 2024, it looks like we sent about $26 billion to Israel in an aid package. Following that, in 2025, we sent $3.8 billion, followed by another billion in 2025. And then we finished that up with $12 to $18 billion that we are currently pending and considering sending to them in 2026. Now, I'm going to expand on some of these, and you guys can pause and read them if you feel like it. And it just breaks down the specifics behind the money that we're sending and why we're sending it. So for example, in 2024, the total package was $95 billion, but $26.4 billion of that package was sent to Israel, right, for various things. And then coming down here to 2026, the pending package, it looks like it's an emergency supplemental appropriations request submitted to Congress on March 4th. Expected to include the Iron Dome and Arrow Interceptor replenishments, precision guided munition. Looks like there's some humanitarian assistance in there, and then a bunch of other stuff, right? So it's currently pending, and it's ranging from 12 to $18 billion based on historical precedent and current operational tempo. So really interesting to see that we are continuing to send money there. I mean, we're burning through cash. We're hemorrhaging cash, billions of dollars over the course of a week, right? $1 billion a day, as a matter of fact. During this conflict, and then to be able to pull out another 12 to 18 billion to send over there is just absolutely ludicrous. But again, that is what we do, right? That's the American dream. Now, the cost of this war doesn't stop there. It unfortunately bleeds into the everyday American's pocketbooks, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. So right now, the cost of regular gas is up about 30% from pre-war prices, okay? Diesel's up 44%. Jet fuel is up about 67%, which is staggering. And then heating oil is up 60%, okay? And these are all based off the pre-war prices before this conflict started. Currently, the average US household is spending about $300 a month extra. That equates to about $3,500 a year in additional costs due to this conflict. If we go down a little bit further, we can see the food and commodities impact, right? So it's about a 7.7% increase on weekly costs. And if we look at the increase in the individual items, so wheat is up 7%, corn is up 4%, soybeans up 14%, rice is up 30%, and it's insane, but cooking oil is up 75%, coffee is up 61%, and then obviously beef and a couple other things are up as well. But these supply chain disruptions are serious, and you feel this, right? When you go to the grocery store and you need to buy some coffee, and all of a sudden it costs twice as much as it did before, right? When you need cooking oil, and all of a sudden it's costing 75% more than it did before, these things matter, right? You know, you might have been scraping by on a $200 a month, $100 a month food budget, but now that's been slashed in half. You lost 20, 30% of that because of price increases, and there's nothing you can do about it. You're stuck, right? So these prices are serious, and it's unfortunate that we all have to suffer now because of this, and hope to God that this conflict resolves itself in a timely fashion. But let's go ahead and move on to some other things. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is this incident that happened in Lebanon. It's all over the news right now. It seems that a IDF soldier decided to take a sledgehammer to a statue of Jesus on the cross. People are completely outraged, as they should be. And I think a lot of people are realizing that Israel does not like Christians at all, right? So Christians in Israel are historically oppressed. Americans that go to Israel who are Christians are repeatedly spit on and heckled. And it's interesting because Christianity is the #1 group in the United States that supports Israel. Meanwhile, they are disrespected constantly. And there's years of history and evidence to show that Israelis and those who practice Judaism do not like or support Christianity whatsoever. But there are some videos that come with this picture and this incident. So we're going to check those out, as well as a comment by one of the rabbis in Israel regarding this incident. So let's go ahead and check some of this out.
16/12/2025 آخر السنة. هذا كسرين الصليب على لمينة.
You see the arms are broken off. I don't know what this guy's saying, so I'm just going to mute it. You can see the arms are broken off and, you know, just completely desecrated. Skip through a little bit here. I don't think he touches it. As you can see, there's a photo of the IDF soldier, cross upside down, sledgehammer. Oh, it looks like either a sledgehammer or the back of an axe of some sort. Just absolutely crushing the face of Jesus. Insane. Now, there was a rabbi who made, before we look at the rabbi, let's go ahead and look at what the IDF said. So, following the completion of an internal examination regarding a photograph published earlier today of an IDF soldier harming a Christian symbol, It was determined that the photograph depicts an IDF soldier operating in southern Lebanon. The IDF views the incident with great severity and emphasizes the soldier's conduct is woefully inconsistent with the values expected of its troops. And look, it's okay to say that. It's okay to say that, hey, we don't we don't agree with these guys' actions. We think this is a bad look. When I was in the military, it was the same thing. If you burned a fucking Bible, people are going to tell you, hey, that's a problem. If you burn a Torah, people are going to tell you, what are you doing, right? If they find you in your fatigues setting a Quran on fire, they're going to say, what the hell is that, right? That's the initial reaction that you should give as an organization. But following on here, it says that the incident is being investigated by the Northern Command and is currently being addressed through the chain of command. Appropriate measures will be taken against those individuals in accordance with the findings. Furthermore, the IDF is working to assist the community in restoring the statue to its place. The IDF is operating to dismantle the terrorist okay, nobody cares about that. Yeah, they're fighting a war against Hezbollah. Got you. But this has nothing to do with Hezbollah, okay? I know they wanted to throw that in there about them fighting a war against terrorists, but Jesus Christ on the cross is not a terrorist, okay? All right, the last thing I want to touch on before I end the video is the actual casualty numbers. I know there's currently a ceasefire in place, but paying attention to the casualty numbers and where they stand right now is really important for understanding the scale of this conflict and where it could go if fighting picks back up in a few days here. So to run through this really quickly, let's go ahead and start with Iran. Currently, Iran has about 2,500 confirmed casualties, 1,300 are military, 1,200 are civilian. They have about 26,000 injuries and 3.2 million people have been displaced. Moving over to Israel, we have about 45 deaths total, 17 military, 28 civilian. 5,000 people have been displaced with another 7,500 who have been injured. Coming down here to the US really quick, 13 total, all military, no displacements because that's not our region. And then we have about 400 injuries. Next, the numbers kind of pick back up once you look at Lebanon. So about 2,300 people total have been killed, about 600 military and 1,700 civilians, which is significant. Killing 1,700 civilians in Lebanon is a huge number, right? Following on, you have about 1.5 million that have been displaced with about 7,500 who have been injured. Following up, we have the Gulf states, and this is really nice because they just rolled it all up into one data sheet. 35 killed, all civilian, no displacements, and right now it's about 300 injuries in the Gulf states. The last two is Iraq. A lot of people don't know that Iraq is involved. Iraq got hit, Iraq got attacked as well. And right now, looks like 95 military have been confirmed killed. 14 civilians have been confirmed killed with another 165 injuries. And then last but not least, 2 French soldiers have been killed with another 10 that have been injured due to the conflict. So those are the casualty numbers, and they're pretty high if you consider what's been going on. No ground forces, no ground warfare, all just, rockets and drones and artillery and, missiles and all that stuff. So really important to see. And it's crazy too, there are some videos that came out online recently. I don't know if you guys saw some of these, but I saved a couple of them. But some of these videos are insane. So let me show you these real quick. So the first one here is an interception. That's crazy. If anybody's been to the Middle East, if any of you other guys have ever been overseas, it's crazy to see some of the places we've been getting hit now. It's kind of surreal, right? Good. But here's another one. Let me start from the beginning. This one's insane.
Oh, there's. Oh. Are y'all good? Everybody's good. Everybody over here is good. Yeah. Good. I saw that one come in. You guys all right? Everybody okay? Yeah.
Bro said, I saw that one come in. Yeah. That's crazy. Obviously, there's a lot of fighting going on. Hopefully, a ceasefire remains. But if not, then this is what we have to look forward to. More rockets dropping on our bases, more people's lives at risk, and a lot more disruption and cost for the average American. So that's pretty much it, guys. I wanted to give you a quick rundown of where things stand right now. There's a lot of news reports that we could go through, but I could save that for another video. Just let me know what you guys think about this content. Do you like this kind of content where I talk about some of the other aspects of this war that aren't really spoken about? Or do you prefer something a little bit different? Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.